Hey guys, this is In the Boat with Ben TV, episode 6. I'm Ben,
And I'm Rachel.
and I'm wearing a new Christmas hat that you got me. I don't know if you can see it, but on the front it says naughty.
I didn't notice that.
When you bought it, you didn't notice?
No.
Oh, so yeah, depending on what mood I'm in, it also says nice on the back.
Hmm.
So
Well, that explains a lot.
yeah, I'm feeling a little naughty today, so no, I'm just kidding. So today we're talking about better understanding our child by learning about their personality type. There are a lot of different frameworks out there for understanding personality types, and you may have heard of some of them before, like Myers Briggs is one of them. My Myers Briggs is ENFJ. Do you know what yours is?
Mine is INFJ.
Yeah. So there you go. If you know what those letters mean, then you know a little bit more about us. There's also Hippocrates' Four Temperaments. That's kind of an older one. There's one that's been pretty popular recently called The Love Languages, and that's also kind of a framework of understanding how people give and receive love. And there are a lot of other ones out there. We're going to link to some of the ones that we've used in the description below. One of the questions that we asked ourselves early on was, how do we determine our child's personality type? Now, there are a number of reasons you might want to do this. For us, when our oldest was starting to experience some anger and behavioral issues, we started to research a little bit and try to understand him a little bit more. And as we did, we found a lot of really interesting information about his personality type that made a lot of what he was going through make sense for us.
Yeah, and one of the things we learned by just observing some of the characteristics that he showed at home is that he is an introvert, and being involved in school where he is sitting in a pod of desks with six or seven other kids, sometimes more, just drains him. And so he would come home and just be completely exhausted and wouldn't be able to follow instructions, wouldn't be able to handle his emotions. And knowing that about him helped us know that once he got home, he kind of needed some quiet space to regroup. And it's hard in our house to find quiet space, but it was something that we had to just carve out for him, or else he just wasn't functioning as well as he could be. He needed that regrouping time.
So, this was a situation where we had been doing some research, so we learned about the different frameworks. And based on what we learned, we were able to apply that knowledge to what we were observing. And so, I would say the first step is to learn about these frameworks and learn about the different ranges that people can fall into. And the more familiar you are with those things, the easier it's going to be for you to see based on observation. You can also take an online test with your child and let them go through and answer some questions about their personality type. There are some that are even geared specifically toward kids that are really helpful and that kind of speak their language. You can also just ask them questions. Sometimes sitting down and just having a conversation with our kid is the best way for us to learn a little bit more about what's going on in their head and how they operate.
And how they see the world.
Mhm. In most of the personality frameworks, what you see is really a range. So when I say I'm an ENFJ, the E stands for extrovert. When Rachel says she's an INFJ, the I stands for introvert. But there's quite a range there. So Rachel could be a little bit of an introvert, or she could be way on the edge of being an introvert.
Oh, it's way.
hmm Whereas I'm not far on the edge of being an extrovert. I actually tend to be close to introverts sometimes, and then my comfortable spot is right on the other side of that line. So it really, when you research and you find those definitions aren't binary. There's some range in there. And so don't think of it in terms of, oh, my child's an introvert, so they're all the way an introvert. They may be right there on that line. Another thing to keep in mind is that within those ranges, sometimes depending on the environment or depending on their growth and development, they'll kind of oscillate within a certain range on those lines. And so it's good to be mindful of that and to pay attention and to watch for signs that maybe they're not quite as feeling quite as introverted today as they were yesterday, those kinds of things.
There are also other factors that can make children behave in different ways. Things like being hungry or being tired. And if we're not conscious of those kinds of things, we can sometimes tend to project our own personalities onto our kids. So it's important to be able to look at those things objectively.
By the way, she's really tired, and I can tell because she's really grumpy. I'm grumpy too.
I'm only grumpy because he's naughty. Now, I will say that we have one son who, at least one son, who has a sticky brain. And whenever he asks a question, it will not be the only time he asks the question, especially if the answer is not what he wants.
Yeah. So I don't know if any of you watch boxing, but this kid will go rounds and rounds and rounds with the same question met with the same answer over and over again. So today it was wanting to go to the store to buy Pokemon cards.
Yay!
And we had scheduled it for this evening. We said, we're going to go this evening. And still today, he was wanting to go sooner, trying to negotiate with us and whine and complain and do whatever he could. And this was the third day in a row that he's been doing this.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not always the personality traits aren't always things that we find favorable as
Right.
parents, but that is an attribute, if shaped the right way,
Mm-hmm.
can really serve him well later on in life.
Yeah.
The reason understanding our child's personality type is so important is because when we understand the way that they function most naturally, it helps us to empathize with them more easily. It helps us to understand their language and their way of seeing the world. Being able to look at them through that lens of what their personality type might be really helps us to feel less frustrated when they are acting in a way that isn't really normal for their personality.
Mm-hmm. And again, it's not so that we can order their world and make it perfect and give them everything they want. It's more so that we can have a proper response to the ways that they misbehave. And that's a really valuable thing as parents.
And there's something fundamental going on there when our children feel understood, and they won't know the complexities of this. They won't understand, oh, they know my personality type, and so now they're speaking my language. But when we make that effort, that intentional effort to really understand the way our children view the world and how they experience it and interact with it, and then we speak to them from that understanding, there's some part of them that feels more deeply understood and more deeply loved. And so that's the thing that we're really after as parents. And that's when a child feels like you're speaking their language. Thank you guys for watching. If you want more content like this, you can go to intheboatwithben.com. We've got a weekly podcast there where we talk about a lot of the same kind of things that we talk about here on this show. But we go into a little bit more depth. And we also crack more jokes at each other. And you can watch more In the Boat with Ben TV videos by subscribing to this channel. You don't have to go out and buy the most expensive tools when your child expresses an interest in something. In fact, it's good for them to use tools and equipment that may be a little bit more crude in the beginning while they're still exploring their interest. There's a saying that goes, a great artist could make a masterpiece with crayons. The important thing is not the tools that you use, but it's really the mastery, the skill with which they're used.